The day my name disappeared from the wedding seating chart was the day I understood how quietly power can be taken from you. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting, no confrontation, just an email forwarded by mistake. I was 31 years old, sitting in my car outside a grocery store in Portland, Oregon, when my phone buzzed. The subject line read, "Final table assignments. Please confirm." It wasn't meant for me. The message was from my older brother's fiancé, sent to my mother, my brother, and several relatives. I recognized most of the names. I wasn't one of them. At first, I assumed it was an oversight. Weddings are chaotic. People forget things. Then I opened the attachment. I scrolled slowly. Table 1, immediate family. My parents. My brother, Nathan. His fiancée, Brooke. Her parents. Her sister. Table 2, extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Table 3, friends of the couple. I scrolled again. There was no table with my name. I checked the spelling. Checked again. Nothing. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Long enough for the engine to idle too long. Long enough for a stranger to glance at me through their windshield. I closed the file, sat there, waited for the familiar instinct to explain it away. Maybe I'd been placed somewhere else. Maybe I was standing with the parents. Maybe I was helping. I called my mother. She didn't answer. I didn't leave a message. That was how it always started. Small exclusions, minor adjustments. Things that could be explained if you tried hard enough. I had spent most of my adult life trying hard enough. My name is Lauren Whitaker. I'm the younger child, the flexible one, the reliable one. The one who moved back home at 28 when my father had his first heart scare. The one who adjusted my career around other people's needs. I worked in corporate compliance for a regional insurance firm. It was steady work, quiet. I was good at it. It taught me how to read documents, track inconsistencies, and notice what people assumed no one would question. That skill would matter later. At the time, all it did was make me notice patterns I wasn't ready to name. Nathan was 4 years older than me. He had always been louder, more confident, more visible. When he spoke, people listened. When I spoke, people considered. Brooke fit into our family easily. She was polished, organized, the kind of woman who took control without ever raising her voice. When she entered a room, decisions seemed to arrange themselves around her. She worked in event management. Weddings were her language. The engagement had happened quickly. 3 months after they started dating, 6 months before the wedding. Everyone was thrilled. Everyone except me, apparently. That night, my mother called back. "Oh, honey," she said lightly. "You saw the seating thing." "Yes," I replied. "Well, Brooke's trying to keep the front tables very streamlined. Immediate family only." I waited. "You are immediate family," I said. There was a pause. "Well," she continued, "Nathan mentioned you'd probably be more comfortable helping in the back. You're so good at that kind of thing." Helping. That word followed me everywhere. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why no one had asked me. I didn't point out that I'd taken time off work, booked a flight, paid for a dress. I said, "Okay." After the call, I sat on my couch and stared at the wall until the light changed. The next week, another small thing happened. My parents hosted a dinner for Brooke's relatives. I wasn't invited. I found out because my aunt posted photos online. Everyone was there. Even cousins who lived out of state. The caption read, "So nice having the whole family together before the big day." Whole. I commented, nothing. 2 days later, Brooke texted me. "Hey Lauren, just checking if you can help manage guest arrivals on the wedding day. You're so calm under pressure. Let me know." I stared at the message. Not an invitation. An assignment. I agreed. Not because I wanted to, because I still believed cooperation would protect me. The night before the wedding, I stayed at my parents' house. I helped my mother steam table linens. I listened while she worried about flower placements and weather forecasts. Nathan barely spoke to me. At one point, I overheard Brooke in the kitchen, whispering to my mother. "She's just very sensitive," Brooke said. "We're trying to keep things simple." My mother hummed in agreement. I stood in the hallway, invisible. The wedding morning arrived, cold and clear. I wore the dress I'd bought weeks earlier. Navy blue. Modest. Appropriate. When I arrived at the venue, the coordinator handed me a clipboard. "Lauren?" she asked. "You're on guest check-in." "Yes," I said. She lowered her voice. "You're not listed in the wedding party or seating." "I know," I replied. She hesitated. Where would you like to sit during the ceremony? I opened my mouth, then I closed it. I'll stand, I said. She nodded, uncomfortable. As guests arrived, I smiled, greeted them, directed them to their seats. I watched my family walk past me. My parents didn't stop. Nathan didn't look at me. Brooke smiled like everything was exactly where she wanted it. That was when something shifted. Not anger, clarity. I realized that everything I'd called love had conditions I hadn't agreed to. That my silence had been interpreted as consent. That my flexibility had become an expectation. And expectations, once violated, become punishments. The ceremony began. Music swelled. Everyone sat. I stood at the back, alone. I didn't cry. I didn't feel dramatic or wronged. I felt something colder. It felt removed. And as I stood there, holding a clipboard no one would ask for again, I made a decision I didn't announce. I would stop helping. I would stop explaining. And I would start paying attention. Because if they thought excluding me had no consequences, they had misunderstood who I was. Exclusion doesn't end when the music stops. It settles in. After the wedding, people hugged, laughed, clinked glasses. I returned the clipboard to the coordinator and stepped outside into the cold air. My hands were steady, my breathing was even. From the outside, I looked fine. Inside, something had gone quiet. I left before dinner was served. No one noticed. The next morning, I drove back to Portland alone. The highway was nearly empty. Long stretches of road without exits. I didn't turn on the radio. I let the silence sit with me. By the time I reached my apartment, I had already replayed the wedding in my head enough times to know this wasn't about seating charts or logistics. It was about hierarchy. Nathan and Brooke hadn't excluded me accidentally. They had placed me exactly where they thought I belonged. Useful, peripheral, replaceable. What unsettled me most wasn't their behavior. It was my parents' silence. They had watched it happen. They had chosen not to intervene, not even quietly. That realization stayed with me through the following weeks, as small confirmations piled up. The first came at Thanksgiving. Our family had always rotated holidays. This year, Brooke insisted on hosting. She sent a group text with details: time, address, parking instructions. Then a follow-up. Lauren, we figured you might want to come later since you're working. No pressure. I wasn't working. She hadn't asked. I arrived on time anyway. When I walked in, every seat at the dining table was already taken. Place cards neatly arranged. Names written in careful script. Mine wasn't there. Brooke glanced up, surprised for half a second, then recovered. Oh, we didn't realize you'd be early, she said lightly. You can sit on the couch and join us after. After. I looked at my parents. My mother adjusted her napkin. My father cleared his throat. No one spoke. I sat on the couch and watched my family eat. Conversation flowed around me. Stories, laughter, plans for Christmas. No one asked why I wasn't at the table. When dinner ended, Brooke handed me a plate. Sorry about the mix-up, she said. You're so flexible. I figured you wouldn't mind. I took the plate. That night, back in my apartment, I opened my laptop and began doing something I'd never done before with my own family. I started documenting dates, events, messages, screenshots, not out of spite, out of curiosity. I wanted to understand how this had happened without me noticing. Patterns emerged quickly. I noticed how often decisions were framed as practical when they benefited Nathan and Brooke, and as emotional when I questioned them. How often my parents deferred to Brooke's preferences. How often Nathan spoke for me without checking. I also noticed something else. My parents' finances were changing. They'd always been private, but I handled their insurance paperwork when my father had his health scare years earlier. I knew the structure, the accounts, the long-term planning. At Thanksgiving, my mother mentioned casually that Brooke had helped reorganize things. She's very good with systems, my mother said. I asked what she meant. Oh, just some accounts, making it simpler for later. The word lingered. 2 weeks after Christmas, I received an email from my parents' bank. It was addressed to all authorized contacts. Nathan was listed. Brooke was listed. I wasn't. That was new. I called my mother. Oh, Brooke suggested adding her, she said, in case something happens. And removing me? I asked. A pause. Well, she didn't think it was necessary for everyone to be involved. I thanked her and ended the call. That night, I sat at my desk and stared at the wall, the same way I had after the wedding, except this time, I didn't wait for the feeling to pass. I named it. I was being edged out, quietly, systematically, with everyone's consent, and I finally understood why. I wasn't confrontational. I wasn't dramatic. I didn't demand space, so they took it. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not to threaten anyone, not to start a war, just to understand my position. Her name was Elaine Carter. She specialized in family and estate law. Her voice was calm, unhurried. "I'm not sure I need anything yet," I told her. "I just want to know what to watch for." She asked a few questions, precise ones. Then she said, "You're describing a gradual transfer of control." I closed my eyes. "That happens when one party assumes authority and others don't object," she continued. "It doesn't require bad intentions, just silence." "What do I do?" I asked. "Pay attention," she said, "and don't sign anything you didn't ask for." I hung up and felt something solid form under my ribs. Not anger, resolve. The next family gathering was a birthday dinner for my father. Brooke handed out cards for everyone to sign. When it reached me, I noticed something odd. The envelope was already sealed. I didn't open it. I didn't ask. I smiled, signed my name on the outside, passed it along. Later that night, after everyone left, I found the envelope in the trash. Inside was a document, a draft, a proposed amendment to my parents' will. Nathan and Brooke named as primary decision makers. My name mentioned once. As contingent, I folded the paper carefully and put it in my bag. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't cry. I didn't warn them. I simply understood something critical. This wasn't about love. It was about control. And control, once visible, can be challenged. They just didn't know yet that I had stopped standing quietly in the back. Control doesn't tighten all at once. It tests first. After the birthday dinner, I didn't mention the document I'd found in the trash. I didn't tell Elaine. I didn't ask my parents about it. I wanted to see what would happen next if I stayed quiet but alert. It didn't take long. In early February, Nathan called me for the first time in weeks. His tone was casual, almost friendly, the way people sound when they think they're being generous. "Hey," he said, "Brooke and I were talking. We think it might be time to simplify some things for Mom and Dad." I waited. "You're in Portland now," he continued. "Busy. It might make sense for us to take the lead going forward." "On what?" I asked. "Everything," he said lightly. "Bills, appointments, paperwork. You know." I knew. "And you didn't think to include me in that conversation?" I asked. There was a brief pause. Not confusion, calculation. "Well," he said, "you didn't seem interested." That was new. I pictured the wedding, Thanksgiving, the bank email, the sealed envelope. "I've never said that," I replied. "No," he agreed. "But you also never objected." There it was. Silence, interpreted as permission. "I'll think about it," I said. "Great," he replied, relieved. Brooke already started organizing things. After the call, I didn't move for a long time. I thought about how easily my absence had been framed as disinterest, how quickly my quiet had been rewritten as consent, how neatly my role had been edited out. 2 days later, I received a package. Inside was a neatly labeled binder, color-coded tabs, typed summaries. On the cover, Whitaker Family Overview. It was impressive, professional, thorough. It also excluded me completely. Emergency contacts listed Nathan and Brooke. Decision trees that never branched toward my name. Notes about future planning that assumed my parents' compliance. A system built without me. I flipped through it slowly, noticing small details others might miss. Language choices, passive phrasing, the way authority was implied rather than stated. I took photos of every page. Then I put the binder back in the box and drove to my parents' house. They were surprised to see me. "Oh, you should have called," my mother said, already apologetic. "I wanted to talk," I replied. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd done homework as a child, where decisions used to be discussed openly. I placed the binder between us. "Have you read this?" I asked. My mother hesitated. Brooke explained it. "Did you read it?" I repeated. She shook her head. My father glanced at the binder, then away. "I want to understand something," I said calmly. When did I stop being included? Neither of them answered right away. My mother finally spoke. We didn't want to burden you. That's not what this does, I said, tapping the binder. This removes me. My father sighed. It's just easier this way. For whom? I asked. He didn't answer. I nodded slowly. Okay, that was it. No raised voices, no accusations, no tears, just confirmation. That night, I emailed Elaine. I sent her the photos, explained the binder, the call from Nathan, the draft amendment. Her reply came the next morning. You're being positioned as non-essential, she wrote. Once that narrative solidifies, it's hard to reverse. If you want a voice later, you need to establish presence now. How? I replied. By asserting a role, she wrote, quietly, legally. A week later, Brooke invited me to lunch. She chose a cafe near her office, neutral territory, public. She arrived early, ordered for both of us. I'm glad you could make it, she said warmly. I wanted to clear the air. I smiled. Me too. She talked first, about stress, about responsibility, about how hard it was to balance everything. You understand, she said. You've always been so supportive. Supportive. I noticed you've been making decisions without me, I said. She tilted her head sympathetically. We didn't want to overwhelm you. That seems to be the explanation everyone's using, I replied. She laughed softly. Lauren, you're reading too much into things. I don't think I am, I said. Her smile tightened slightly. We're just trying to protect your parents, she said. Someone has to take charge. And you decided that someone was you, I said. She leaned forward. You don't want that responsibility. You like your independence. I held her gaze. You don't get to decide what I want. For the first time, she looked unsettled. I'm not trying to push you out, she said carefully. I just think this arrangement works. For now, I replied. She hesitated. What does that mean? It means I'm paying attention, I said. The check arrived. She insisted on paying. I'll send you updates, she said as we stood, so you don't feel left out. Left out. I walked away without responding. That evening, I took a leave day from work and drove to the county records office. I requested copies of my parents' existing will, power of attorney documents, and any recent filings. What I found wasn't illegal yet, but it was incomplete. Signatures missing. Amendments drafted but not executed. Authority implied but not formalized. A plan in progress. That was when I understood the real danger. They weren't taking something that already belonged to them. They were creating a reality where no one would question it later. And they were counting on me to stay quiet until it was too late. I didn't confront them. I didn't warn them. I made an appointment with Elaine for the following week. Because once people assume you won't resist, they stop hiding their moves. And I was ready to let them believe that a little longer. People reveal more when they think you've already agreed. The week after my lunch with Brooke, the updates started arriving. Emails, group texts, calendars shared without discussion. They were careful to include me now. Just enough to appear considerate. Not enough to give me influence. FYI, Brooke would write. Just looping you in. Thought you'd want to know. Information without authority. I didn't respond. I watched. At work, I requested a few days off under the guise of personal matters. My manager approved without question. I used the time to sit in Elaine Carter's office with a legal pad on my lap, and every document I'd collected spread between us. She reviewed everything slowly, methodically. The binder, the emails, the bank change, the draft amendment. This is a soft takeover, she said finally. No single action crosses a legal line, but together they're building momentum. Toward what? I asked. Toward exclusion with legitimacy, she replied. By the time anyone questions it, the story will be that you stepped back voluntarily. That landed hard. What stops it? I asked. Presence, she said. And records. She explained my options. Not dramatic ones, not ultimatums. Quiet counterweights. Formal requests for inclusion. Written objections. Documented refusals to delegate authority without mutual consent. Nothing confrontational, she said. Just unmistakable. I left her office with a plan that felt oddly calm, not revenge. Containment. The next move came from my parents. They invited me to dinner the following Sunday. Just the three of us. No Nathan, no Brooke. I arrived early, Help set the table. My mother looked nervous. My father barely spoke. After we ate, my mother folded her napkin carefully and placed it beside her plate. "We need to talk about the future," she said. I nodded. "We're getting older," she continued. "Nathan and Brooke have offered to help manage things. We think it's time to make it official." "Official how?" I asked. My father slid a folder across the table. Power of attorney forms. Medical and financial. Nathan and Brooke listed as primary agents. I scanned the pages once, then closed the folder. "When were you planning to tell me?" I asked. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We didn't want to hurt you." "That's not an answer," I said gently. My father finally spoke. "It's easier this way." The same word again. "I'm not agreeing to this," I said. The room went very still. "We're not asking you to," my mother said quickly. "We're just letting you know." "That's not how legal authority works," I replied. "If I'm removed, I have a right to object." My father frowned. "Why are you making this difficult?" I looked at him. Really looked. "Because you're asking me to disappear politely," I said. "And I won't." My mother reached for my hand. "Lauren, please." I withdrew my hand slowly. "I'm not saying no to helping," I said. "I'm saying no to being erased." They didn't argue. They didn't reassure me. They simply looked tired. That was when I realized something else. They weren't choosing Nathan and Brooke because they trusted them more. They were choosing them because they demanded less emotional discomfort. I left shortly after. The next morning, I sent an email. To my parents. To Nathan. To Brooke. Clear. Polite. Precise. I stated that I did not consent to any legal or financial decisions made without my inclusion, that I expected to be listed as a co-agent in any power of attorney documents, that I would formally contest any filings that excluded me. No emotion, no accusations, just position. Brooke replied within minutes. "I think you're overreacting," she wrote. "This feels unnecessary." Nathan followed an hour later. "Why are you doing this now?" he asked. "We were almost done." Almost done. That phrase stayed with me. Elaine smiled when I showed her the emails. "They're surprised," she said. "Good." Within days, the tone shifted. Updates stopped. Calls went unanswered. The silence returned. Heavier this time. Then came the escalation. I received a certified letter at my apartment from a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a notice. Nathan and Brooke had filed for temporary conservatorship, citing concerns about my parents' vulnerability and family conflict. Family conflict. They were attempting to formalize what they'd already been practicing. They hadn't expected resistance. They definitely hadn't expected documentation. I forwarded the letter to Elaine. Her reply was immediate. "They moved too fast," she wrote, "and now they've made it visible." That night, I sat at my desk and organized everything I had. Every message, every omission, every assumption. I didn't feel scared. I felt steady. Because once people decide you won't fight back, they stop being careful. And Nathan and Brooke had just shown their hand. Visibility changes behavior. Once the conservatorship notice arrived, the quiet manipulation gave way to something sharper, not louder, more urgent. The kind of urgency that comes when people realize time is no longer on their side. Elaine filed our response within 48 hours. Not a denial, a challenge. She requested documentation, medical evaluations, evidence of incapacity, a timeline of alleged conflict. She attached my written objections, the emails, the draft will amendment, the binder Brooke had assembled without consent. She didn't editorialize. She let the paper speak. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. 3 weeks is a long time when everyone is pretending nothing is wrong. My parents stopped calling. Nathan sent one message, brief and strained. "This doesn't have to be ugly." I didn't reply. Brooke tried a different approach. She called my office. I didn't take the call. She emailed instead. "Lauren, I know you're stressed, but this legal route is extreme. We're family." Family. I forwarded it to Elaine and archived it. At work, I kept my head down. I did my job. I didn't explain anything to anyone. The quiet competence that had once made me invisible now gave me cover. No one asked questions. No one pried. At night, I reviewed documents and wrote notes in a plain notebook. Dates, times, words used, who said what and who didn't say anything at all. Patterns became clearer. Nathan spoke when authority was needed. Brooke spoke when persuasion was required. My parents spoke only when they were tired. One afternoon, my mother showed up at my apartment, unannounced. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, emotionally. "I didn't know it would go this far," she said as soon as I opened the door. I stepped aside and let her in. She sat on the couch and clasped her hands tightly together. "Brooke said you're trying to take control," she said. I sat across from her. "I'm trying to keep my place." She shook her head. "Why does this have to be legal?" "Because you stopped listening when it was personal," I replied. She flinched. "I'm tired," she said quietly. "I just want things to be easier." I nodded. "I believe you." She looked up, hope flickering. "But easy for who?" I asked. She didn't answer. Before she left, she asked one question that lingered long after the door closed. "Are you doing this to punish us?" "No," I said. "I'm doing it so I don't disappear." The week before the hearing, Brooke escalated again. This time, it was public. A post appeared on her social media page, carefully worded. No names, just concern. Watching loved ones struggle with difficult family dynamics is heartbreaking. Sometimes stepping in is the hardest but most loving thing you can do. The comments filled quickly. "So strong of you. Family is complicated. You're doing the right thing." I didn't respond. Elaine advised me not to. "Let it exist," she said. "It helps us." 2 days later, Nathan called. His voice was tight, controlled. "You're forcing our hand," he said. "You already forced mine," I replied. "You don't understand what you're risking," he said. "I understand exactly," I replied. Silence. Then, quietly, "Brooke is furious." I almost laughed. The night before the hearing, I slept well. That surprised me. The morning arrived gray and wet. I dressed simply, no jewelry, no statement pieces. I wanted to look like what I was, a daughter, not a threat. The courthouse smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper. Elaine met me at the entrance. She was calm, focused. Nathan and Brooke arrived together. Brooke wore a tailored blazer. Nathan looked uncomfortable, like a man realizing too late that he had let someone else drive. We didn't speak. Inside the courtroom, the judge reviewed the filings without expression. Brooke's attorney spoke first. He painted a picture of responsible adult children stepping in to protect aging parents from conflict and confusion. He mentioned my distance, my job, my emotional responses. Elaine stood. She didn't raise her voice. She presented facts. No medical diagnosis of incapacity. No emergency. No evidence of financial mismanagement. A clear pattern of exclusion. A sudden attempt to formalize control only after I objected. She ended with one sentence. "Guardianship is not a convenience tool." The judge turned to my parents. "Do you believe you are incapable of making your own decisions?" he asked. My mother hesitated. My father looked at Nathan, then at Brooke. Then he said, "No." The judge nodded. "Do you wish for one child to hold exclusive authority?" he asked. My mother shook her head slowly. "No." Brooke's face tightened. The judge leaned back. "This petition is denied," he said. "There is insufficient cause." Denied. Final. Outside the courtroom, Brooke lost control. "This isn't over," she snapped. "You've embarrassed us." I looked at her calmly. "You tried to erase me," I said. "This is what happens when you're seen." Nathan didn't meet my eyes. My parents stood between us, stunned. In the days that followed, the silence returned. But it was different now. It wasn't heavy. It was empty. And emptiness, I would learn, is what fills the space when control collapses. After control fails, people scramble to rewrite the story. The conservatorship petition was denied, but the damage it caused didn't disappear with the ruling. It lingered in conversations that stopped when I entered the room, in glances exchanged between Nathan and Brooke when they thought no one was watching, in my parents' sudden carefulness around me, as if I were fragile instead of firm. Brooke didn't apologize. She recalibrated. Within a week, my mother called to say Brooke had suggested family counseling. "She thinks we need a mediator," my mother said. "A mediator for what?" I asked. "To move forward," she replied. I declined. "I'm not interested in processing something that's still happening," I said. There was a pause. Then disappointment, not anger. Disappointment that I wouldn't smooth things over. That same afternoon, I received another email. This one from a financial planning firm. It thanked me for my inquiry. I hadn't made one. I called Elaine immediately. "They're trying to box you out again," she said. Different angle. We discovered that Brooke had contacted the firm on behalf of my parents, listing herself as the primary point of contact. She hadn't lied exactly. She'd simply omitted. Elaine sent a formal notice that any communication excluding me would be considered contested. The firm apologized, updated their records. The pattern repeated itself over the next few weeks. Doctors' offices, insurance providers, account managers. Each time, Brooke appeared first. Each time, I appeared later, correcting. It was exhausting. And that was the point. Control doesn't need to win outright if it can wear you down. One evening, my father called me directly. That was unusual. "I don't like this," he said without preamble. "I don't either," I replied. "You've made things very difficult," he continued. I waited. "Brooke means well," he said. "She's just trying to help." "She tried to remove me legally," I said. "That's not help." "She wouldn't have done that without thinking it was necessary," he said. "That doesn't make it right," I replied. He sighed heavily. "You're asking us to choose." I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. "I'm asking you to stop letting someone else choose for you," I said. Silence. Then quietly, "I'm tired." I closed my eyes. That night, I wrote a letter. Not an email, a physical letter. I addressed it to my parents. I explained, without accusation, what I would and would not accept going forward. That I would not participate in any decision-making process that excluded me. That I would not act as unpaid labor without acknowledgement. That I would step back entirely if boundaries were ignored. I mailed it the next morning. 3 days later, Nathan showed up at my apartment. He looked older, not tired, worn. "We need to talk," he said. I let him in. He paced while I sat. "She's furious," he said. "She thinks you're punishing her." "I'm protecting myself," I replied. "She feels like you've turned this into a legal war," he said. "She turned it into one when she filed paperwork," I replied. He stopped pacing. "You know Mom cries at night," he said. I met his eyes. So did I. That seemed to land. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "I didn't think it would get this far," he admitted. "That's because you never thought I'd say no," I said. He sat down heavily. "What do you want?" he asked. I considered the question. "I want to be included or left alone," I said. "Not managed." He nodded slowly. "I don't know if I can make her understand that," he said. "That's not my responsibility," I replied. He left shortly after. 2 weeks passed without contact. Then something unexpected happened. My parents called together. "We've updated our documents," my mother said. Elaine received copies that afternoon. Revised powers of attorney, co-agents, equal authority, explicit language preventing unilateral changes. It wasn't an apology. It was acknowledgement. Brooke wasn't listed anywhere. That night, I sat in my apartment and felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief. Stability. Because for the first time since the wedding, the structure had changed. And structures, unlike intentions, are hard to undo. Stability has a sound. It's quiet, unremarkable, easy to overlook if you've spent years listening for tension. After my parents updated their documents, the noise receded. Not completely. Brooke didn't disappear. Nathan didn't suddenly become reflective. But the urgency was gone. The constant repositioning stopped, and that's when the next layer surfaced. Control, once blocked, often seeks a different entry point. It came through the family business. My grandparents had started it decades earlier. A small manufacturing company outside Salem. Nothing glamorous. Steady contracts, predictable margins. My father had taken it over in his 40s and grown it carefully. When his health declined, Nathan stepped in as acting director. I had never worked there, but I knew the structure. I'd reviewed compliance reports, helped with audits, quietly flagged issues no one else wanted to deal with. 2 months after the conservatorship ruling, I received an email from the company's accountant. It was addressed to Nathan. I was copied by mistake. The subject line read, "Updated ownership structure for signature." I opened the attachment. The proposal outlined a revised operating agreement, voting shares redistributed, authority centralized. My parents' stake unchanged for now. Nathan's increased. Mine, non-existent. I stared at the screen, then leaned back in my chair. This was different. This wasn't about caregiving, or protection, or convenience. This was consolidation. I forwarded the email to Elaine. Her reply came quickly. "They're shifting assets instead of authority," she wrote. "Same goal, new route." "What can I do?" I asked. "Nothing yet," she replied. "Let it proceed. We need intent." The following Sunday, my parents invited me to lunch again. Nathan and Brooke were there. Brooke greeted me with a tight smile. Nathan avoided eye contact. The conversation was polite, surface level, safe. Halfway through, Nathan cleared his throat. "We've been talking about the business," he said. "Long-term planning." I waited. "Brooke has a background in operations," he continued. "She's been helping streamline things." I nodded. "We think it makes sense to formalize that," he said. "So we're proposing some adjustments." "What kind of adjustments?" I asked. He slid a folder across the table, the same document I'd already seen. My mother looked between us, nervously. "This is just about efficiency," Nathan said. "Reducing friction." "And my role?" I asked. He hesitated. "You don't have one." There it was, said plainly, casually. "As of when?" I asked. "Well," he said, "you were never formally involved." I looked at my parents. My father said nothing. My mother said, "We didn't think you'd be interested." I closed the folder. "I am interested," I said, "in not being erased." Brooke leaned forward. "Lauren, this isn't personal." I met her eyes. "It never is when you're the one deciding." She smiled thinly. "We're trying to protect what your father built." "So am I," I replied. Nathan's jaw tightened. "You're making this difficult again." I nodded slowly. "I'm making it visible." Silence followed. I stood. "I won't sign anything," I said, "and neither should you." I looked at my parents. "If this goes forward without my consent, I will contest it." Brooke laughed softly. "On what grounds?" "Fiduciary duty," I said, "and pattern." That got her attention. I left without waiting for a response. 2 days later, the accountant called me directly. He sounded uncomfortable. "I wanted to clarify some things," he said. "I'm glad," I replied. He explained that Brooke had been directing revisions, presenting them as aligned with my parents' wishes, that Nathan had approved them quickly. "Did you speak to my parents directly?" I asked. "No," he admitted. "We assumed." "That's the problem," I said. "I sent Elaine everything. This time, she didn't tell me to wait." "This is actionable," she said, "and it's risky for them." We prepared a formal notice, not a lawsuit, a warning. It outlined concerns about unilateral restructuring, conflicts of interest, and the exclusion of a legal heir. It cited statutes, precedents, consequences. It was delivered to the company's board, the accountant, and Nathan. Brooke was not copied. That was intentional. The response was immediate. The restructuring was paused. The board requested an independent review. Nathan called me that night. "You blindsided us," he said. "You tried to remove me again," I replied. "This was about the company," he insisted. "No," I said. "It was about control." He exhaled sharply. "You're tearing the family apart." I closed my eyes. "No," I said. "I'm stepping out of the part you assigned me." The review took weeks. During that time, something shifted again. People started asking questions. The accountant, a board member, even my father, quietly, one evening. "I didn't realize how much she was doing," he said. "That's how it works," I replied, "when no one checks." The final report came back in early fall. It recommended no changes without unanimous consent. It flagged conflicts. It noted governance concerns. Nathan resigned as acting director 2 days later. Brooke stopped attending meetings. The business stabilized, at a cost. Thanksgiving came and went quietly that year. No seating charts, no assignments, just absence. And absence, I learned, can be the first honest thing in a family. After the business review ended, no one rushed to fill the silence. That was the strangest part. For years, tension had been constant, like background noise you only notice when it stops. Now there were gaps. Days without messages. Weeks without updates disguised as courtesy. I didn't chase them. I focused on rebuilding the parts of my life that had been paused while I was busy being available. At work, I accepted a promotion I delayed for over a year. It meant longer hours, more responsibility, and less flexibility. The old version of me would have hesitated, worried about who might need me. This time, I signed the offer letter without consulting anyone. My parents adjusted unevenly. My mother called more often, not to manage logistics, but to talk. About the weather, a book she was reading, a neighbor's dog. Small things that felt tentative, like she was relearning how to speak to me without assigning a role. My father was quieter, thoughtful, sometimes uncomfortable. One afternoon, he asked if I could come by alone. We sat on the back porch, the air crisp with early autumn. "I didn't see it," he said after a long silence. "I know," I replied. "I thought letting Nathan take over would simplify things," he continued. "I didn't realize how much ground I was giving up." I looked at him. "You trusted the wrong person with the wrong kind of authority." He nodded slowly. "And I let you carry the cost. That mattered more than an apology." Brooke didn't contact me, not once. Her absence was deliberate. She had lost access, not dignity. And that made it harder for her to play the victim. Nathan tried a different approach. He invited me to lunch. "I think we need to reset," he said, stirring his drink without looking up. "Reset what?" I asked. "Our relationship," he said. "This has gone too far." I watched him carefully. "You mean it stopped going your way?" I said. He sighed. "You've changed." "Yes," I replied. He hesitated. "I don't recognize you." "That's because you only knew the version of me that didn't say no," I said. He didn't argue. We ate in silence. A week later, Elaine called. "There's one more thing you should be aware of," she said. She explained that Brooke had consulted another attorney. Not about conservatorship. Not about the business. About estate planning challenges. "She's exploring whether past influence could be questioned," Elaine said. "Mine or theirs?" I asked. "Yours," she replied. "She's positioning you as disruptive." I exhaled slowly. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means she's not done," Elaine said, "but she's running out of leverage." We prepared anyway. Affidavits, timelines, witness statements. My parents signed clarifications, affirming their decisions were voluntary and informed. Not dramatic, just clear. The challenge never came. Weeks passed. Then months. Winter settled in. One evening in December, my mother invited me for dinner again, just the two of us. She cooked carefully, like she was afraid of doing something wrong. Halfway through the meal, she said something unexpected. "I miss how things used to be," she said. I looked at her. "So do I replied. "But only the parts that were real." She nodded. "I didn't realize how much peace I was buying by letting someone else speak for me." "That peace wasn't yours," I said gently. She reached across the table. "I'm learning." I believed her. Christmas came quietly. No large gathering. No performance. Nathan sent a card. Brooke didn't. I felt nothing about that. The real shift happened in January. My parents updated their will, not because of pressure, not because of fear, because they wanted clarity. Elaine handled it. Equal acknowledgement, defined boundaries, safeguards against unilateral changes. When my mother told me, she watched my face carefully. "This isn't about favoring you," she said. "It's about fairness." "I know," I replied. That night, alone in my apartment, I realized something had changed permanently. Not my family. Me. I no longer waited to be included. I no longer filled silences with effort. I no longer negotiated my place at tables I wasn't invited to. The power hadn't shifted back to me. It had returned to where it always should have been, with myself. And for the first time since the wedding, I slept without replaying conversations in my head. That was the real victory. The challenge didn't come from Brooke the way I expected. It came quietly, through someone else. In late February, I received a voicemail from a woman named Patricia Reynolds. She introduced herself as a court-appointed mediator. Her tone was neutral, professional. She wanted to discuss a family concern involving my parents. I didn't return the call. I forwarded it to Elaine. Elaine called me within the hour. "She's testing jurisdiction," she said, "seeing if you'll engage." "Should I asked. "Yes," she said, "but not directly." Elaine contacted Patricia on my behalf and requested clarification. The response came back in writing. A mediation request had been submitted by a third party, citing ongoing familial interference and coercion. No names were attached, but the language was familiar. "Is this real?" I asked Elaine. "It's procedural," she replied. "Not dangerous, yet. But it creates a record." "A record of what?" I asked. "Of conflict," she said, "which can be useful to someone else later." We responded formally, declined mediation, asserted that no legal dispute existed between myself and my parents, included copies of the revised documents, affirmations of capacity. Patricia acknowledged receipt. The matter closed. For now. 2 weeks later, My mother called me late at night. I had a strange conversation today, she said. With who? I asked. A woman from church, she replied. She asked if everything was okay between you and us. My jaw tightened. What did she say exactly? I asked. She said she heard there was tension, my mother continued. That someone was worried we were being pressured. I closed my eyes. The smear had begun. Soft, concerned, plausible. Brooke wasn't attacking me directly. She was seeding doubt in safe places. Elaine warned me this might happen. When legal routes fail, she'd said, people try social ones. I asked my mother what she'd said. I told her we were fine, she said, that you were helping us think clearly. I exhaled. But it bothered me, she added, that someone would talk about us like that. It bothered me too. But not enough to react. That was the difference now. In March, Nathan called again. This time, his voice was subdued. She's struggling, he said. I didn't ask who. She feels shut out, he continued. Like everyone's turned against her. I waited. She says you've poisoned Mom and Dad against her, he said. I almost laughed. Instead, I said, did I file paperwork? No, he admitted. Did I restructure the business? I asked. No, he said again. Did I try to remove you legally? I asked. Silence. Then this isn't about me, I said. He sighed. I don't know what to do anymore. That's not my job to fix, I replied. He didn't argue. The next escalation was the boldest. I received a letter from Brooke's attorney, not a threat, a request. They wanted a meeting to resolve ongoing misunderstandings before irreparable harm occurred. Elaine smiled when she read it. She's looking for leverage, she said, or an admission. We declined. Formally. Briefly. The reply came 2 days later. Another letter. This one included an attachment. An affidavit signed by Brooke. It described her experience of being excluded, of feeling sidelined, of believing my influence had shifted family dynamics. No accusations, no evidence, just feelings. Elaine read it carefully. She's building a narrative, she said, for court or for reputation. What do we do? I asked. Nothing, she said, unless she files. She never did, because something else happened first. My parents made a decision of their own. They sold the business, not under pressure, not in crisis. They'd been discussing it quietly for months. The buyer was a regional firm. Fair offer, clean exit. Nathan found out from my father. Brooke found out last. When the news broke, the response was immediate. Calls, messages, accusations. How could you do this without us? Brooke demanded, according to Nathan. My father's reply was simple. You already tried to do it without us, he said. That ended it. The sale closed in April. My parents downsized, moved closer to town, simplified their lives. Brooke lost the last platform she'd been positioning herself to control. She didn't call again. Neither did her attorney. The mediator never followed up. The whispers stopped. By summer, the story had changed. Not because I corrected it, because it no longer fit. People stopped asking questions when there was nothing to point to. No drama, no crisis, no visible victim, just boundaries holding. One evening in June, my mother said something that stayed with me. I didn't realize how dangerous quiet compliance could be, she said. Neither had I. But I'd learned. And once you learn that, you don't unlearn it. By the time summer arrived, the storm had passed. Not because everything was resolved, but because nothing was left to fight over. The sale of the business closed quietly. No celebration, no family dinner, just signatures, wire transfers, and the sound of something ending without ceremony. Nathan called me once after it finalized. They didn't even ask my opinion, he said, stunned. I didn't soften it. They didn't need permission, I replied. That's the part you're still adjusting to. He was quiet. I thought I was protecting them, he said. You were protecting access, I said. There's a difference. He didn't argue. That told me everything. Brooke disappeared from family life almost completely. Not dramatically. Not with a final message or confrontation. She simply stopped showing up. No holidays, no calls, no updates disguised as concern. At first, my mother was shaken by that. She won't even answer my texts, she said once, hurt flickering across her face. I chose my words carefully. She was never interested in connection, I said. Only position. That truth took time to settle. My parents moved into a townhouse near downtown. Smaller, brighter, easier. They invited me over to see it once everything was unpacked. It felt neutral. No ghosts, no history. That mattered. My father walked me through the rooms proudly, like he was reclaiming something. "We don't need much anymore," he said. "Just peace." For the first time, I believed him. Work filled the space my family once occupied, not because I was avoiding anything, because I had room. I led a compliance review for a major acquisition. Long days, precise work, the kind that requires attention, not emotion. It suited me. One afternoon, my manager called me into her office. "You've changed," she said. I waited. "You're clearer," she continued. "More decisive." I smiled faintly. "I stopped negotiating things that aren't negotiable." She nodded. "It shows." In August, Elaine invited me to coffee. "You don't need me much anymore," she said, almost amused. "That's the goal," I replied. She studied me. "You handled this well." "I didn't feel like I was doing anything heroic," I said. "That's why it worked," she replied. "You didn't try to win. You just refused to lose." I thought about that on the walk home. In September, Nathan sent me a long email. Not angry, not defensive, just tired. He wrote about pressure, about wanting approval, about how easily he'd let Brooke take the lead because it relieved him of responsibility. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't apologize directly. He ended with one sentence. "I didn't realize silence could be such a powerful answer." I didn't respond, not because I was punishing him, because not every realization requires a reply. My mother changed the most. She stopped explaining herself, stopped justifying choices to keep peace. One afternoon, she told me she'd declined an invitation from Brooke's family. "I didn't feel like pretending," she said. That was progress. The final shift came unexpectedly. At Thanksgiving, my parents hosted a small dinner. Just the three of us. No seating chart. No roles. No assumptions. Halfway through the meal, my father raised his glass. "To Lauren," he said. I looked up, surprised. "For standing still when the rest of us moved too fast," he said. "And for not letting us drag you with us." My mother nodded, eyes wet. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. That night, walking back to my car, I felt something I hadn't expected. Closure, not reconciliation, not forgiveness. Closure comes when the story stops asking you to participate. Brooke never returned. Nathan learned how to live without an intermediary. My parents learned how to speak for themselves again. And I learned something quieter, but more important than all of it. You don't need to raise your voice to reclaim power. You don't need to explain your pain to people invested in misunderstanding it. You don't need revenge when boundaries do the work for you. I had been excluded politely, controlled gently, removed without noise, and I had stepped out of the role they'd written for me, not by destroying anything, but by refusing to disappear. Distance doesn't arrive all at once. It shows up in small, almost invisible ways. Fewer calls, longer gaps between updates, invitations that never come, followed by the realization that you don't miss them. By October, my life had settled into a rhythm that felt unfamiliar in the best way. I woke up without checking my phone first. I made decisions without running them through anyone else's expectations. I planned weekends without leaving space for emergencies that never should have been mine. The quiet was earned. Nathan and I existed in parallel rather than connection. He sent occasional updates about work, about the weather, about nothing important. I replied politely, briefly. We were learning how to be siblings without hierarchy. It was awkward, necessary. One afternoon, he asked if we could talk. We met at a coffee shop near my office. Neutral, public, safe. "I'm trying to understand where I went wrong," he said after a few minutes. I watched him carefully. "You assumed I'd absorb whatever you handed me," I said, "because I always had." He nodded slowly. "And when you didn't, you felt challenged," I said, "not concerned." He winced. "I didn't think of it that way," he said. "That's the problem," I replied. "You didn't think of me at all." He didn't defend himself. That mattered. "I don't expect things to go back," he said. "I just don't want them frozen." I considered that. "Movement doesn't mean closeness," I said. "It means honesty." He nodded. When we left, there was no hug, no promise, just an understanding that something had ended, and something else might begin later, if it was earned. My parents continued adjusting. My mother started seeing a therapist, not because anyone suggested it, because she wanted to understand why she'd given away her voice so easily. She told me this one evening over the phone. I thought being agreeable kept everyone safe, she said. I didn't realize who it was costing. That belief didn't come from nowhere, I said. She was quiet for a moment. I don't want to pass it on. That mattered more than an apology. My father's health stabilized. With fewer people managing him, he seemed calmer, more present, less defensive. One night, he asked me something I hadn't expected. "Did you ever think about leaving us completely?" he asked. I answered honestly. "Yes," he nodded. "I'm glad you didn't." "So am I," said. "But not for the reasons you think." He didn't ask me to explain. That was new. Brooke remained absent. Occasionally, I heard fragments through extended family. That she was taking space. That she felt misunderstood. That she believed things had been taken from her unfairly. I didn't correct anyone. Truth doesn't need defending when it's consistent. In November, Elaine called one last time. "Everything is clean," she said. "No outstanding filings. No challenges." "Thank you," I said. She hesitated. "Most people don't follow through the way you did." "I wasn't trying to prove anything," I replied. "I just stopped moving out of the way." She smiled. "That's usually enough." Thanksgiving came again. This time, I hosted. Nothing elaborate. Simple food. A small table. Just my parents and me. No empty chairs. No roles assigned. At one point, my mother reached for the serving spoon, then paused. "Do you want to start?" she asked. I smiled. "Yes," I said. As we ate, I felt the absence of tension where it used to sit. Not replaced by joy, by neutrality. And neutrality, I'd learned, is where real choice begins. Later that night, after they left, I stood in my kitchen and realized something else had changed. I no longer rehearsed conversations in my head. I no longer prepared explanations for decisions I hadn't made yet. I wasn't anticipating backlash. I was simply living. That was the quietest revenge of all. The last thing to return was not trust. It was ownership. Not of property or documents or decisions on paper, but of myself. I noticed it one morning in early December, standing in my kitchen with a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands. Outside, the city moved the way it always had. Cars passed, someone walked a dog. Life continued without waiting for permission. And for the first time, I wasn't bracing for impact. For years, my body had lived slightly ahead of itself, anticipating the next request, the next expectation, the next quiet demand disguised as love. That constant readiness had felt responsible, mature, necessary. Now it felt unnecessary. I no longer checked my phone with a sense of duty. I no longer felt compelled to explain my choices before making them. The internal negotiation had stopped. That was when I understood what had really happened. I hadn't won anything. I had opted out. Nathan and I settled into a distant but functional rhythm. We exchanged birthday messages, occasional updates, nothing heavy. Nothing unresolved enough to reopen. He stopped trying to justify the past. I stopped needing him to. One afternoon, he sent a short text. "I'm learning how to hear silence without filling it." I didn't reply. Not because it wasn't meaningful, but because the learning was his, not mine. My parents changed more than I expected. My mother became firmer, not louder, clearer. She stopped asking for reassurance after every decision. She trusted her own judgment again, even when it made others uncomfortable. My father followed her lead. Slowly, carefully. He deferred less, questioned more. When people spoke for him, he corrected them. Watching that was strange and healing. They never asked me to forgive anyone, never asked me to forget. They didn't frame the past as a misunderstanding. They let it be what it was. That was respect. Brooke remained a closed chapter. She never apologized, never confronted me, never tried again. I didn't wonder what she thought. That curiosity had left with the last trace of obligation. In January, a year after the wedding that had quietly removed me, I attended another one. A coworker. Small, uncomplicated. I sat at the table assigned to me, ate, laughed, left when I wanted. Nothing about it lingered. On the drive home, I realized how much power I'd once given to moments that didn't deserve it. How easily I'd allowed other people's comfort to outweigh my own presence. How often I'd mistaken endurance for virtue. That wouldn't happen again. Work continued to grow. I led projects, mentored new hires, took up space without apology. When decisions were made, I was in the room, and when I wasn't, I didn't wonder why. I trusted that absence was sometimes a choice, not a judgment. In February, Elaine sent a final email. No further action needed. You're clear. I closed my laptop and sat back. Clear. That word stayed with me. Clear of legal threats. Clear of obligations I hadn't chosen. Clear of the role that had required me to disappear politely. One evening, my mother asked me something quietly. "Do you ever wish you'd handled it differently?" she asked. I thought about it. "No," I said. "I wish I'd handled myself sooner." She nodded. "I'm proud of you," she said. This time, it didn't feel like a correction. It felt like recognition. My name is Lauren Whitaker. I was excluded gently, managed carefully, nearly erased without a raised voice. I didn't shout. I didn't confront. I didn't seek revenge. I paid attention. I documented. I refused to move out of the way. The moment I stopped explaining myself to people who benefited from misunderstanding me, everything shifted. Not outwardly, internally. And that was enough. If you've ever felt yourself shrinking to keep peace, this is what I learned. Peace that requires your absence is not peace. It's compliance. And compliance costs more than conflict ever will. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments what moment felt familiar. If you've lived through family drama, betrayal, or the quiet kind of power struggle where silence was expected of you, you're not alone. Like the video if this spoke to you. Subscribe if you want more stories about boundaries, karma, and choosing yourself. Some endings don't arrive with noise. They arrive with certainty, and that is enough.